Hi YouTube, welcome to another edition of Horror Hands. And the other day I went through my entire Hammer horror collection, which inspired me to go through my entire Amicus collection. So for this video I'm going to be doing just that. I'm going to be going through the Amicus movies that I have in my collection and just saying a little bit about the movies. So just in case you're not aware, Amicus were a film studio who ran alongside Hammer in the 60s and 70s, making similar type films. But I'm going to be a little controversial and say that a lot of the Amicus movies I actually enjoy more than Hammer. So I always thought they were a little bit underrated, but when you go back and look at the films they did some excellent films, especially their anthology films. They did some of the best anthology films I've ever seen, a lot of which will be on this list. So I'll go through the movies that I own. So the first movie, it's a documentary actually, is Amicus House of Horrors. This is a 2-disc documentary about Amicus and the movies that they made. It's a really good documentary. It goes into quite a bit of detail and talks about all their sort of major movies and things like that. Really interesting stuff. Definitely recommend checking this out if you're a fan or interested in these kind of movies. Next one is And Now the Screaming Starts. This one I really enjoyed. I just don't remember too much about it. I know that's a little bit lame, but it's been a while since I watched this. But really good performance by Peter Cushing and a great performance by Herbert Lom, who's a real not very nice guy in this. And I think it's like this supernatural force in this house as a result of something that Herbert Lom did to these people. But great movie. Next one is one of my favourite Amicus movies, Asylum. This is absolutely fantastic. The first Amicus film I ever saw, I believe, and it takes place in an asylum where we are introduced to about 4 or 5 inmates, and the movie tells each of their stories, which shows how they came to be in the asylum. And one of the patients is actually the head doctor who worked at the place, and Robert Powell stars as a young doctor who has to decipher who was the doctor who's now incarcerated in the asylum. But it's a fantastic film. Highly recommend Asylum. Really good movie. Next up is The Beast Must Die. So Calvin Lockhart stars as this guy who gets a bunch of people together, but he's like a big game hunter and he knows that one of them is a werewolf. It's an interesting film. It kind of goes on the basis where you are the detective and you have to work out not who's the killer but who is the werewolf. It's a really interesting concept that they introduced at the beginning. It's not really pulled off in the film itself, but it's a novel idea that I thought was pretty cool. Not one of the best movies from Amicus, but still pretty good. The only thing I remember about this, which kind of annoyed me slightly, is that Calvin Lockhart is supposed to be this sort of worldwide big game hunter, but he cannot aim or shoot to save his life. I lost count how many times he missed the werewolf while shooting at it, so that always stuck with me. But decent movie nonetheless. Next up is The Deadly Bees, probably the worst Amicus film that I've seen. This was actually used in an episode of Mystery Science Theatre, which kind of gives you an indication of the quality of this one. Next up, another wonderful anthology, From Beyond the Grave. This is signed by David Warner, who was an absolute gentleman. But yeah, this is another one of my favourite Amicus movies. Peter Cushing owns this strange antique shop where people go in and buy things, but a lot of the customers in it are morally questionable, and the items that they buy, they usually like shortchange Peter Cushing or kind of manipulate him into giving them for a really low price. But the item that they buy is cursed in some way, and kind of comes back to haunt these unscrupulous people. Really great movie. Next up, another one of my favourites, another anthology, The House That Dripped Blood. This may actually be my favourite Amicus film. It's absolutely fantastic. Some really great stuff in this. You've got John Pertwee as the grumpy horror actor who gets attacked by vampires. The Christopher Lee story where his daughter has a voodoo doll of him, that's great. Denholm Elliott is a writer who's writing about an escaped lunatic who then starts to stalk Denholm Elliott for real. Some really good storytelling in this one. Some self-referencing humour as well, which was quite rare for these type films. But excellent film. Highly recommend The House That Dripped Blood. Next one is Madhouse with Vincent Price, Peter Cushing. Don't remember too much about this one. I think they're working on a movie or something like that. It's been a long time since I've seen this one. Again, I know I enjoyed it. It's just been a while that I don't remember too much about it. Next up is Scream and Scream Again. This is a weird concoction of a film, this is. It's got like a bit of sort of espionage, thriller, horror, a few things going on. And then it sort of ends up with sort of Vincent Price has got this underground lab where he's doing weird experiments. Yeah, a bit of a mess of a film, but it does star Vincent Price, Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee, which is more than enough for me to watch it and enjoy it. Interestingly, I didn't think this was an Amicus film, and there's actually no mention of Amicus on this Blu-ray, but on Wikipedia this is listed as an Amicus production, so thought I'd throw it in on the list. Next up is The Skull, another really great film. This is an interesting watch because Peter Cushing plays the sort of villain of the movie and Christopher Lee plays the good guy, the voice of reason, which was very rare that happened when those two were on screen together. So yeah, interesting watch, The Skull. Really enjoyed that one. Next up is a double feature of Tales from the Crypt and Vault of Horror, two of the finest horror anthologies you'll ever see. And just to mention something about Tales from the Crypt, the scene where Peter Cushing comes back from the grave, if you want to see an example of absolute masterful horror filmmaking, check out that scene with Christopher Lee, Peter Cushing coming back from the grave. Just the mood, the atmosphere, the setting, the props, the makeup, the music, it's just wonderful. It's absolutely fantastic. One of the greatest horror scenes I've ever seen. So yeah, Tales from the Crypt and Vault of Horror, both highly recommended. And the last one is Torture Garden with Burgess, Meredith and Jack Palance. This one, I think they like go to this sort of sideshow. They're travelling around and they go to this weird sideshow, and there's a guy who kind of, it sort of reveals things that they've done or something in their past, things like that. It's been a long time since I've seen this one as well, but again, remember really enjoying it, really liking the creepy atmosphere in this one. So they are my Amicus movies. Like I say, I highly recommend pretty much all of them. Maybe not Deadly Beast so much, but the rest of them are all really good movies. So let me know which one is your favourite film. Thank you very much for watching, and stay tuned for more videos.